So, I'm not the type to invest myself too deeply in TV. Usually I'm able to tuck everything neatly beneath the blanket of fiction and go about my day. There have been a handful of exceptions to disrupt this rule over the years, scenarios so upsetting that the emotions inspired carry over and follow me around long after the credits have rolled. But rarely is that emotion hate or dislike for one specific character. Like, I'm a Christian, I'm not supposed to hate anyone, so for me the feeling is doubly alarming, even when pertaining to fiction. I get concerned it may point to a greater, very real problem on my end, so I'm galvanized to trace it to the source. Gabi Brown. Rarely has a character been so polarizing. Some loved her, some would have probably sold their left kidney just to get the chance to punch her IRL. And while my distaste didn't run that deep, there was something about her that used to rub me the wrong way. At this point, I think there are several reasons behind this, one of which I'll be addressing here. 2 words: cognitive dissonance. I think the show kinda railroads Gabi in this regard. You're expected to forgive her for making the same mistakes over and over and over, and any negative feelings directed toward her for this are seemingly demonized by the show itself. Here we have an audience with a strong moral distinction of right and wrong, and the show is telling us, yeah, she keeps doing this or that, but she's a brainwashed child, so if you falter even a little, maybe you're the awful person. Past a certain point, it kind of feels like a social experiment, and we, the audience, are the guinea pigs. What's your pain threshold? Just how much are you willing to take from this character? Maybe that was the point. It's certainly worth considering. Maybe Gabi was intended as a gauge of sorts, to try and make us reflect inward on our own intolerances. Still, in order for a story to be satisfying, there has to come some degree of consequence. Otherwise, you walk away feeling lopsided, uneasy. Sure, youth and brainwashing can negate some accountability a character has, but I'm not so sure it can absolve them 100%, not when the character in question is this relentlessly abrasive. And by being this hardline about coddling her, the show alienates a large portion of its audience. But that's kinda black and white. How about we bring in some nuance? Let's make a list. 1. We're expected to excuse the Sasha thing. Okay, that's fine. Gabi's homeland was being invaded, several of her friends were killed in front of her, and there was even an instance where she saw Sasha sniping her comrades from a rooftop. With the information she had, it's logical she'd react the way she did, and if they'd countered by throwing her off the Zeppelin, that would have also been logical. She could have had another gun on her, a bomb on her, who knows what. But they didn't. They risked it. She took a brief beating and was detained, which was significantly more merciful than death by water tension from 3,000 feet. 2. We're expected to excuse the prison thing. Okay, that's fine. If you're a POW and you have no idea what's going to happen to you, killing someone in order to escape could probably still qualify as self-defense. The guard just wanted to help her, which adds a layer of tragedy, but she wasn't fully aware of this, and there wasn't the time for much consideration. 3. We're expected to excuse her wanting to impale Kaya with a pitchfork. Here's where I'm probably a bit more lenient than some would be. I still see where she's coming from. You're in enemy territory, this girl is basically a stranger, and you don't know if she's going to rat you out. Deliberation is understandable. And finally, my breaking point. 4. The Nicolo thing. For whatever reason, it seems we're expected to excuse this too, and I'll admit, this bizarre gaslighty scene has been a thorn in my side since I first watched it. For reference, Gabi killed Sasha. It was tragic, but it was war. Sasha was Nicolo's love interest. She was his inspiration, and more than likely, she was the closest person in his circle. So here he's alone with Gabi and Falco, and she lets it slip that she killed Sasha. You can imagine his reaction, but the thing is, she doesn't stop there. You are 12 years old, you are almost a teenager, and by now you need to realize, when someone is looking at you like the big-eyed Bert meme, maybe stop talking. But she doesn't, and he's so enraged that he swings a bottle of wine at her head. Falco takes the hit, and just like that, her innocent friend pays the price for her inability to read a room. It doesn't stop there, by the way. The Titan spinal fluid the wine was, supposedly, laced with gets in Falco's mouth, so it's not just a concussion he's facing. He could, supposedly, die from this. While everyone's reeling from these developments and tensions are reaching their wariest height, Nicolo outs Gabi to Sasha's father and hands him a knife in the hopes that he'll exact revenge. Instead, he gives a speech. It starts off really strong. He tells how Sasha was a good person, but she wandered in the forest a little too long, the forest being a metaphor for a culture of war and death. It's poignant while it's poignant, but the ending kind of upends it. He seems to single Nicolo out and berate him for getting angry at a child. She made fun of his dead girlfriend, the girlfriend that she killed. But yeah, it's totally his fault. She's blameless, as always. If you kill a soldier in war, that's war. If you mock that dead soldier to their loved ones, that's sadism. You could argue she didn't know, but with this face, how unaware could she be? Okay, maybe mock is a strong word, but at the very least she was super tactless. The Eldians have shown her so much mercy at this point that her insistence to vilify them at every turn is starting to wear thin. It can be expected that she'd still have reservations, but to hold so tightly to the hate she was taught. There comes a point where hate becomes a choice. In spite of this, Mr. Blouse forgives Gabi, and that's really beautiful of him. But again, it doesn't stop there. If he only spoke for himself, it would have been fine. But he has this little addendum, this little jab at Nicolo.
I see it. When it comes to shouldering the sins and hatreds of the past, that burden should fall to adults like you and me.
In this moment, Nicolo is the audience. In this moment, Mr. Blouse is the show. This show is calling us out, and not even subtly. The cherry on top is when Nicolo drinks the Kool-Aid and agrees, so I guess we're expected to agree with him. We're not garbage humans after all. You wouldn't dare be mad at a little kid for killing the person you loved most, right? It's this smugness, this mistaken self-assurance that triggers the hate reflex in a lot of people. It's basic psychology that if you come on too strong about something, people will resist, even if it's just on general principle. Have you ever seen a comment section on, well, pretty much anything? We're presented a very nuanced situation, but instead of being left to form our own answer, an answer is being force-fed to us. A very infantile, clunky answer, which makes us want to spit it right back out. I really wish Mr. Blouse had just forgiven Gabi and stopped. Then Nicolo could have seen that and been like, well, she was his daughter. If he can find it in him, I can too. No guilt-tripping necessary, just natural, genuine development. It would have come across so much less preachy. Possible rebuttals for disliking Gabi. You liked Eren in Season 1 and he was literally the same. No, he wasn't. At a superficial glance, Titans were entirely divorced from humanity. The revelation that Titans were actually human didn't come until much later, and when it did, even Levi was near sick at the thought. I can only imagine how mortified Eren was, and from then on, moving forward was a difficult decision. Killing Titans was eventually normalized again, in the name of survival, but the knowledge took its toll. Killing humans has never been a struggle for Gabi, not from what we've seen. Perhaps it's a matter of upbringing, but the fact is she and Eren are pretty different. There's way less internal conflict with Gabi. The joy she gets from killing nameless uniforms can even come across as psychopathic. Eren did kill two of Mikas's kidnappers that one time, and if you were looking for a point of similarity, this is probably the closest you're gonna find. But that was more personal, as opposed to the impersonal nature of war. He felt no remorse afterward, but that was likely because he knew what the men he killed had in store for Mikasa. While remorse was absent, joy seemed to be absent as well. Eren was a boy who did what he had to, but he never reveled in it like Gabi. Unless there's something I'm forgetting, which is entirely possible. It's been a hot minute since I've watched the early seasons. Other possible rebuttals. Gabi was brainwashed. This is the strongest argument in favor of her. She internalized the prejudice leveled against her from birth, and was raised to despise herself and her kind. She risks her life repeatedly, trying to prove that she's not like the other Eldians. She's a human, like the Marleyans. She wants nothing more than to be accepted in a society that's relegated her to second class. She believes the other members of her race are devils, because that's what she's been indoctrinated to believe, and the roots of indoctrination run deep. How badly does she crave Marleyan acceptance? Well, she eagerly charged a pair of enemy snipers while carrying explosives. She took up arms and boarded the retreating Zeppelin that carried the Eldian invaders. Falco insisted on going with her, but she originally wanted to go alone. It was a revenge mission, sure, but part of her still just wanted to be a good soldier. In both of these instances, she was more than prepared to die. So yeah, the roots run pretty deep. To toss away self-preservation so readily, to have such pervasive tunnel vision, that in itself speaks volumes. By that logic, it's possible the giddy joy she exhibits after a kill isn't so much her being a psychopath, but her being proud that she made her superiors proud, one step closer to qualifying as a human. I think you get the picture. When I say cognitive dissonance is likely the reason so many people hate this character, this is what I mean. The character herself is halfway sympathetic when you strip back all external factors, but the show around her slowly turns us against her, and while she's just trying to survive, like anyone else in AOT, the show giving her endless plot armor becomes tired and grating. The lack of consequences she faces, under this obnoxious moral high ground, becomes tired and grating. The heightened sympathy everyone has for this character, and this character alone, becomes a bit of a reach when you realize this is the same country that didn't have a problem training child soldiers for fodder in Season 1. Maybe their sympathetic reaction to Gabi is meant to show growth, but then how come Falco, a fellow child, is always getting the short end of the stick? For all intents and purposes, I understand why Gabi exists. She's there to show the ugly underbelly of propaganda, how it breeds blind hatred and perpetuates the cycle of war. She's there to lend humanity to the other side, as she grapples with her own situation, her loss, her fear, her trauma and anger. I think I stopped hating Gabi when I realized it wasn't really her that was the problem, but rather the show surrounding her. And even so, the show is pretty fantastic. I think anything that can make someone feel this strongly about something has to have some measure of artistic merit. I also think I stopped caring so much about Gabi when a bunch of life stuff happened and put things in perspective. Honestly, there's more to existence than seething over a fictional 12-year-old. Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, thank you for watching.